We are in part 3 of our series, Wāhine. Wāhine. I'm really excited about this series. I love this series. This series is all about uncovering stories of women used in a powerful way by God. There are so many stories. And you know what? If I'm honest, most preachers, we don't preach enough about the women in the Bible. And we should, because there's so much and the way that God moved in their lives. Now, before we get to today's passage, I got something that I need to confess. And it's not bad. It's always interesting when you say, I've got something to confess. I say that so you can lean on in. And you know what? And it's this. I'm not what you call naturally heroic. I'm not naturally heroic. I've never walked into a room and people go, wow, look at that guy. That guy's going to change the world. That's not me. I'm more like that guy that people say, hey, could you please get out of the way? You're blocking the snacks. That's more me. I'm standing in the way. You ever that person that always stands in the way? Like, could you get out of the way? Or your head's too big in the photo. Could you? Sorry, I'm born like this. But that's kind of being me. And growing up, I thought the people who made a difference in the world had laser vision or at least a six-pack abs, not a family pack like mine. And there have been seasons in my life where I felt so average. Not naturally gifted. I wasn't out there curing diseases or building orphanages. I was just trying to get my kids to eat their vegetables and try to remember my Netflix password. That's what I'm trying to do. But I remember I prayed one time, God, use me. Use me to do whatever you want. And I felt like heaven reached out and said, cool, go and stack chairs. And I was like, I'm ready to part the Red Sea. I'm ready to get in there, but apparently I was on chair duty. That was me. But can I be real? There've been moments where I thought, does anything I do actually matter? You ever wonder that for yourself? You ever wonder, is there anything that I actually do? Does it actually matter? Now, if I disappeared tomorrow, would anyone notice? Apart from the people who rely on me for food and the Wi-Fi. Should I just say Wi-Fi? Yeah, so which is why my kids all live at my house, because there's free Wi-Fi, free food, right? Why would you want to move? But here's something I've learned, and I'm still learning it. God is not waiting for you to feel important to do something important. Let me say that again. God is not waiting for you to feel important to do something important. He's not checking your resume. He's not looking for famous. He's looking for faithful. That's what he's looking for, faithful. And honestly, sometimes the most powerful thing that you can do is to show up. It's to show up. Even when no one claps. Even when it's messy. Even when it feels small. Because when it feels small, it is exactly what God is about to do. It is strategic in God's hands. Which leads me to the title of today's message. The title of today's message is this: The Resistance Starts Here. The resistance starts here. If you ever felt overlooked, unseen, underestimated, then I need you to lean on in. Because the beginning of the biggest rescue story in the Bible didn't start with a king. It didn't start with a prophet. It didn't even start with a man. It started with a group of women. A group of women that the world dismissed. Let me show you what I mean. And I'm talking about the Exodus story. The Exodus story is one of the biggest stories in the Bible. The Exodus story. Now, the Exodus story isn't just about a man named Moses, but it's also about 7 women who refused to bow to Pharaoh. Before there was Moses and the burning bush, there were 7 women who stood their ground. Before there was the Red Sea crossing, where the sea parted. Before that event, there was a resistance built by women. And today I want to talk about this resistance built by women. These 7 women in the Exodus story who rescued the rescuer. These 7 women rescued the rescuer. And I'm talking about Moses here. Moses is the rescuer, but these 7 women rescued the rescuer. Now, the book of Exodus, it opens with oppression. God's people are enslaved. Genesis ends with the children of Israel coming to Egypt to be saved. Joseph was there, and then the Bible tells us many years later, another Pharaoh rises that didn't even know Joseph, and he enslaves the people of Israel. Now, even in their slavery, God blesses them in their suffering, and they multiply. They multiply so much that Pharaoh feels threatened. And he does what every insecure leader does. He uses fear and control. Now let's pick up the story in Exodus chapter 1, verse 15. And it says this: Then Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, gave this order to the Hebrew midwives, Shiphrah and Puah. Shiphrah and Puah. He says this: when you help the Hebrew women as they give birth, watch as they deliver. If the baby is a boy, kill him. If it is a girl, let her live. But because the midwives feared God, they refused to obey the king's order. They allowed the boys to live too. So here are the first two women of the seven, the midwives, Shiphrah and Puah. And when we read the story, the king was like, hey, what's going on? You're not killing the boys. And they're like, the Hebrew women aren't like the Egyptian women. There's so much life in them, and they're already born. And so what they're doing, they're lying straight to Pharaoh's face. They lie to his face. Now, let me ask you this question. Is lying a sin? Is lying a sin? And the answer is, so it's interesting, when he says that. And the answer is, that depends. That depends. Where's he going with this? You always know when the pastor asks this question, he's going somewhere with this. See, lying is only a sin when it serves to protect evil. If your words cover up harm, that's sin. But if your words protect life and resist injustice, that's wisdom. That's wisdom. Think about World War II. The Germans who lied to the Nazis when they hid Jewish families. Were they sinning when they lied? No, they were protecting life. How about this? You do it all the time, right? When you lie to a loved one to surprise them for their birthday, is that a sin? Let me tell you something. Not all lies are created equal, because not all motives are the same. Sometimes telling the truth empowers evil, and sometimes resistance looks more like civil disobedience. Or in the case of the two midwives, saying, we're not going to kill anybody's babies. See, when the midwives lied to Pharaoh, God smiled. Did you know, in the Ten Commandments, there is no commandment in the Ten Commandments that says that you shall not lie. Did you know that? You shall not lie is not in the Ten Commandments. What is in the Ten Commandments is that you shall not give a false report. That's what it is. Little fun fact, let's move on. Verse 22. Then Pharaoh gave this order to all the people. Throw every newborn Hebrew boy into the Nile River. Now Pharaoh enlists the aid of all the Egyptians. Throw all the Hebrew boys into the river, but you may let the girls live. Big mistake. Big mistake. Pharaoh thinks girls don't matter, so he lets the daughters live. The very people he overlooked are the ones that God was using to overturn his throne. Now, the third woman of the seven is Moses' mother. Unnamed, unseen, but fully known by heaven. We pick up the story in Exodus chapter 2, verse 2. Speaking of Moses' mother, the woman became pregnant and gave birth to a son. She saw that he was a special baby. Now, in Hebrew, it's the word tov. She saw that he was tov. This is a hyperlink back to Genesis about the woman who saw the fruit was good, pleasing to her eyes. But this is the reverse. She sees that her son is tov, is good, and she kept him hidden for 3 months. She sees tov, she sees goodness in her son, so she saves her son, just like God saw goodness in his creation, just like God sees goodness in you. You may be here this morning, you say, there's no goodness in me, but when God created you, he created you for good. He sees tov in you. He sees goodness in you. And that's a declaration that you need to say over your life. When God created you, he said, it is good. It is tov. Verse 3, but when she could no longer hide him, She got a basket made of papyrus reeds and waterproofed it with tar and pitch. Now, what's really interesting is that the Hebrew word used for basket is the word tevah. Tevah is only used in one other place in Scripture, and that's when Noah built the ark. Noah built the tevah. So what is she building? She's building an ark. She builds her ark, and then she floats her tevah, she floats her ark through the waters to save her baby boy. This is hyperlinking back. God saving the people of God, bringing deliverance through the waters. She saves her baby, the deliverer through the waters into safety. Verse 4, the baby's sister then stood at a distance. This is Miriam. We later find out Moses' sister's name is Miriam later on in the story. The baby's sister then stood at a distance watching to see what will happen to him. Soon Pharaoh's daughter came down to bathe in the water, and her attendants walked along the riverbank. When the princess saw the basket among the reeds, everyone say, among the reeds? Among the reeds. Sounds like a cool movie title. Among the reeds. She sent her maid to get it for her. Verse 6, when the princess opened it, because apparently it had a lid, it was the ark, she opened the ark and she saw the baby. The little boy was crying and she felt sorry for him. This must be one of the Hebrew children, she said. So we got Moses' sister, Pharaoh's daughter, her maidservant. They join the rescue. This is the 6. That's 6. The sister watches. The servant reaches. The princess breaks the rules. Now, Pharaoh's daughter knows that this is a Hebrew baby boy. The writer of this, Moses, who's writing the story later on, wants you to know that Pharaoh's daughter knows that this is a baby boy, a Hebrew baby boy. She knows what her father had decreed. But when she sees that baby, she chooses compassion over command. She chooses mercy over murder. She chooses life over law. Because real resistance doesn't always start with noise. It often starts with a yes in hidden places. Let me say that again. Real resistance doesn't always start with noise. It often starts with a yes in hidden places. And we got the baby sister, Miriam. She does something really bold in the story. You read the story, when Pharaoh's daughter has compassion on this Hebrew child, Miriam comes out. She's been watching the whole time. And she says to the princess, do you want me to find a mother to nurse this baby? She doesn't know what she's thinking. She doesn't know that her life could be at risk by going up to Pharaoh's daughter. But because of her courage, she intervenes. And she says, yes, go find a woman. She goes and she gets her mum to come back and nurse her own child. And the story tells us that Pharaoh's daughter pays her. Now understand this. They're slaves. They don't get paid, but Pharaoh's daughter provides. Beautiful story. We've got Moses' sister. The sister watches, the servant reaches, and the princess breaks the rules. Exodus chapter 2, verse 10 says this. The princess named him Moses. Pharaoh's daughter names him Moses. Moses means I lifted him out of the water. See, that's a prophetic preview. The same God who drew Moses out of the Nile is about to draw Israel out of Egypt. And he's doing it through women that Pharaoh didn't count as a threat. Pharaoh didn't count the woman as a threat. Pharaoh wanted to drown the sons, but he forgot about the daughters. He feared the men and ignored the women. And he built a kingdom of control, but God raised up a coalition of courage. A coalition of women. And notice the story. They're women of different ages. God uses different age groups and also different ethnicities. You got Hebrew woman, you've got an Egyptian woman, and you've got a maidservant. We don't know what nationality she is. But God used different nations together, and God uses you. Regardless of your nation, regardless of your ethnicity, God uses you. And just when you think the story is done, here comes number 7. It sounds like a poem or a rhythm. Just like when you think the story is done, here comes number 7, Zipporah. Zipporah is a Midian. What's really interesting is when you think of Zipporah and you think of Shiphrah, the midwife, what's really interesting, this is really fascinating. This is just outside of the sermon. I just found this really fascinating. Shiphrah the first woman mentioned, and Zipporah, the seventh woman mentioned, their name in Hebrew are spelled exactly the same, except for there's one letter difference. In Greek, it's exactly the same. This is a bookend. This is bookending the seven women. And when Moses meets Zipporah, she's amongst seven women. Of course, the last seven is amongst the seven. I just threw that in there. So Moses grows up, he murders an Egyptian, and he flees to Midian. There you go, just like that, the story shortened. There he finds refuge and a wife, Zipporah. Now, he has his burning bush moment. God sends Moses on this mission to rescue God's people. And so now Moses and Zipporah are on their way, and then the story gets weird. It gets kind of bizarre. There's this bizarre moment, and I'm going to read it. It's in Exodus chapter 4, verse 24. So God said, Moses, go to Pharaoh, tell him to let my people go. Okay, I'm going to listen to you, Lord. I'm on my way. He's on his way. Then it says, Yahweh confronted Moses and was about to kill him. The Lord was about to kill Moses. Wait a minute, wasn't he just sending him? Now he's going to kill him? Then it says this, but Zipporah took a flint knife and circumcised her son. I was like, what the heck is going on in this story? There's so much in there. We're not going to unpack it fully here. But I'm not sure why God was about to kill him. Maybe it's because of the murder of this Egyptian. Maybe because he failed to obey God's instruction on circumcision. He didn't circumcise his son. Whatever it is, it almost cost him his life. Here's what we do know. Moses didn't save himself. Zipporah did. She knew what to do when Moses didn't. She steps in, she acts, she says, without her, the deliverer dies. She rescues the rescuer, Zipporah. So we have these seven women that God uses. Seven women who rescue the rescuer. Shipra and Pur, the midwives, they defy Pharaoh. We've got Moses' mum who saves her son. She sees Tov in her son. Moses' sister Miriam, she stands watch. Pharaoh's daughter disobeys her own father, and her servant pulls Moses from the water. And Zipporah rescues the rescuer. Seven women, seven unlikely heroes, seven courageous yeses. See, these women weren't just background characters. They were the architects of deliverance. And when Pharaoh said, let the daughters live, God said, you have no idea what you just allowed. Because real resistance doesn't always start with noise. It often starts with a yes in hidden places. So what does this mean for us? It means that you don't have to be famous to be faithful. You don't have to have the loudest voice in the room to be used by God. You don't have to have a title. You don't have to have a platform or a perfect past. You just need to say yes. The courage to say yes right where you are. The courage to say yes in your workplace. The courage to say yes in your places of education. The courage to say yes in your family, in your community. Because God still uses ordinary people. People who feel overlooked, underestimated, or unqualified. Here's the thing. When the world writes you off, God writes you in. When the world writes you off, God writes you in. Because you are in the story. Because you matter. What you are doing matters. It may feel insignificant, but it's significant in God's hands. I love this. The seven women in Exodus weren't trying to be heroes. They were just doing what they could with what they had, where they were. That's all they were doing. And this is a word for someone. Because here's the thing. They didn't wait for God to move. They were the move. And some of you are waiting for God to move in your life. I would go when you move, but God said, I'm waiting for you to move, because when you move, I move. They didn't wait for a move. They were the move of God. So here's my question I want to leave ringing in your heart today. What if the small thing God is asking you to do isn't small at all? You're not just raising children. You're raising people who will stand for God. Everything you do, it may feel like you're losing. Maybe you're here and you got kids who aren't walking with the faith. But you planted a seed. And that seed in God's hand, you watch this space. Maybe for you it's that conversation you've been avoiding. There's a reason why God wants you to speak. Maybe it's that team you're leading. Maybe it's that neighbor you just keep running into. Why do I keep running into this neighbor? Maybe God has a plan for you. Maybe that act of kindness that no one else sees. What if your basket in the read moment, what if that is your basket in the read moment? What if the seed of deliverance is for someone else? See, you don't need to wait till you're ready. You just need to trust God is already moving. And He wants to move through you. So be that move. See, the kingdom isn't built by celebrities. It's built by servants. It's built by mums, sisters, midwives, daughters, and friends. It's built by barristers, teachers, mechanics, students, nurses. By people who say, Pharaoh might not see me, but God does. But God does. You don't need a title to walk in power. You just need obedience. Obedience. So go ahead. Be the resistance. Be the resistance against the snake. Because Pharaoh was a snake in the garden. But these women became the resistance against the snake. And in this world, we don't fight against flesh and blood. There's spiritual powers at hand. Will you be the resistance to stand? So I want to end with this. 21 years ago when we walked into this church, and I always joke around how old I was back then. I just want to let you know, I'm in my 40s. What's everyone laughing at that? I'm in my 40s. I was 28 when I walked into this church. 21 years ago. I'm still in my 40s. Just want to say that. He was counting. If you add that all up together, I'm 35, okay? Now, when we first walked into this church, nobody looked at us and said, wow, those two are definite senior pastor material. Nobody said that. We were just a young couple fresh from South Auckland, rolling deep with a bunch of kids. That was us. No halo, no special glow, just a heart and a hunger. Nobody said, you know that guy right there, that guy's going to become senior pastor at Hamilton Elam one day. No one's thought that, certainly not me, 21 years ago. You know, we came to serve, and the first thing I started out was car park security. Let me give you a background. That year, the church was doing this big play called Hell's Gates, Heaven's Flames. Whole church auditioned for it, including me. Everyone got a part except for me. They gave me car security. Apparently, I had a face for radio. I was anointed with a high-vis jacket. Church was in a dangerous place by the lake. You know what? I even jumped into Sparks. I volunteered into the Sparks preschool program. I'll play rugby on a Saturday and I'll wear this colorful vest on a Sunday. Can you imagine me wrangling around a bunch of toddlers? That was me. I even volunteered in a midweek preschool program. And I remember when I was in this preschool program doing one of these songs with these kids, I was imagining the boys that I used to roll with back in South Auckland. Imagine if they saw me now. Imagine they said to me, Ants, what do you do these days? And I'll go, I'm a little teapot. I'm a little teapot, short and stout. Here is my handle, here is my spout. When I get all steamed up, hear me shout. Tip me over, pour me out. That was me. But that's what God called me to do. Because I had a face for radio. There was no, I remember we started coming to this church and there was no intermediate age program. We call it Voltage. There was one, but then the leaders left, and so they closed it all down. And I remember going to ask, because I was bringing all these Price who plays drums and Toro who plays drums and all these young boys from our neighborhood, and they were just making noises in church, and I would be growling them. And I was like, I don't want to growl them during the service. So I went to the leaders and I said, hey, can I start something? They looked at me sideways, and this is what they said. Do you even know how to do that? And I was like, well, I guess I'll find out. That's what I said. Well, I don't know. I'll find out. I got so good at helping that I became the chairman of the church. Literally. I was in charge of packing down the chairs and setting them up. Come on. And I still do that today. Still the chairman. For years, we served in the background. No spotlight, no title, just obedience, just faithfulness, just showing up. And now somehow, by God's grace, here we are leading this church. So what kind of church are we going to be? We're not waiting for Pharaoh's permission. We're not sitting around waiting for perfect conditions. We're not going to stand on the sideline while the world is drowning in despair, but we're going to the reeds. To the reeds. Let's be the people that Pharaoh can't figure out and how can't stop. Let's be a community of resistance, of faith, of courage, of love, of action. Because when we move together, when we all bring our basket, deliverance begins. Because real resistance doesn't always start with noise. It often starts with a yes in hidden places. Come on, church, let us pray.